I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
There are 3 lazy words that people use that prevent them from thinking as sharp as they could be. And when you think sharp, that means you're going to solve problems. It means you're going to start businesses, win games or competitions. Brian Keating, one of the smartest people I know, but also the loser of the Nobel Prize, joins me to talk about these 3 lazy words. Professor Brian Keating from UCSD, famous Nobel Prize loser. Brian, do you mind that I keep introducing you like that?
No, as long as you add the prefix handsome and lovable, as well as with a great aroma in front of loser.
At least one out of those 3 things are true, so I am perfectly happy to say that. And Brian, I was thinking of you earlier because I was thinking of lazy words. I know you have your book coming out, Think Like a Nobel Prize Winner, and it strikes me that people who think with intense focus and solve problems and are creative, there's something not lazy about their thinking. Just as a little bit of an intro, I was thinking of 3 words that are lazy. Just, try, and hope. So for instance, I was just trying this one idea. It seems like a lazy way of doing an idea. Like if you were, I don't know a better way to explain it. In chess, it's easy to say like, oh, I was just developing my pieces. Is a lazy way of not having to think about what piece to move the best. Or, oh, I was just volleying on the tennis court is a lazy way of trying to of not just putting away the opponent. Oh, I was just trying these random, theorems out to see if they would work. It's maybe a lazy way of not really trying to prove a quantum mechanics proof. I don't know. I'm making that up. And so just as one example, try is another example. Like, oh, I'm going to try this, as opposed to really thinking out how you want to solve a problem. You're randomly trying things without thinking about them. And of course, in investing, we know hope is not a strategy. Like hope is a best shot at thinking of a solution, and you're just hoping for the best. You didn't find a solution. You got as close as you could, and you hope that the word hope bridges between reality and the solution.
And I think it's exactly, in line with my thinking. These are sloppy words. These are words that are kind of like the equivalent of ums and ahs in writing and speaking rather, that you would never tolerate if you were writing a book and put in can you imagine you're writing a book and you type in in some nonfiction book? Yeah, of course not. So I was always taught actually by my 10th grade English teacher, Mrs. Tompkins, who listens to this show, listens to your show and my show, and she said never use the word just. Just means justice or fair, and never use the word just to imply, I was just about to do something. It's actually grammatically incorrect as it's just a form of the lexicon. And I was thinking that the word hope, I think Emily Dickinson said, hope is the thing with feathers. Which I never really understood. I mean, there are a lot of things with feathers, right? And Woody Allen wrote a book without feathers. That's actually pretty funny. I guess that means he has no hope. So we have to think of something that.
Wait, well, I don't understand. What's the connection between feathers and hope?
I have no idea. But there's a book or a statement that she said, hope is the thing with feathers. And then Woody Allen, one of his books, is without feathers, implying he has no hope. So what you and I should try to do, not do, as Yoda says, Yoda, by the way, do you know the etymology of the word Yoda in Star Wars, where it comes from?
I feel like at one point I did, but I don't know it right now.
So in Hebrew, the word Yodea means I know. So he got it from Hebrew, and it's someone who's like an all-knowing oracle. And what does he say? He goes, do or not do, there is no try. And so that's two of your words. We have connections to the pop lexicon. And then I have a connection to my 10th grade English teacher. So I really couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like these are kind of like verbal crutches, kind of the way I feel like comedy. Like when you do comedy, I've seen your stand-up many times. I even saw you in person when you gave your TEDx talk here in San Diego 7 years ago. I can't believe it. But when you were doing it, you don't use profanity that much. It's not gratuitous. But those three words, just, try, and hope, are basically gratuitous throwaway garbage words.
Right, and thinking about comedy, like in comedy, you have to take that extra step to be funny, or else you're just like everyone else. If you say to yourself, I'm just going to resort to fart jokes and profanity, and I'll tell some jokes about Tinder. Again, you're not pushing yourself that extra edge. And the reason why this is all important is you have to notice when you're using the word just or try or hope. So if you say to yourself, like what's an example in physics, Brian? Like if you're doing an experiment, I'm just going to sharpen up the lens on this microscope. Somehow or other, you're not solving a problem that's really happening in the microscope.
Yeah, because just and trying implies random scattershot thinking. It implies that you don't have a systematized approach to things. So, you often think of me as, sitting at a telescope all day and, scratching my white beard and pondering the mysteries of the universe. But from past conversations that most of my job is not like that. It's planning on what concrete has to get delivered when, what safety precautions do we need to take at 17,000 feet above sea level in the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, where the Simons Foundation is generously providing me and my 300 collaborators over $100 million to build the world's best microwave telescope to observe the beginning of the universe, if it had a beginning.
And what's the danger of the word just there?
Well, it's more hope. Hope was the word I was locking in on. But, if we just hope that there is no global pandemic after we're done with COVID, we're just hoping that that's not going to happen. And we don't plan on the likelihood that it could happen and multiply it by the financial impact of it actually happening and what's called a risk matrix, we're basically fools and losers, and even more so than normal in my case, because we already are on warning. So there are these things called risk registers that all major projects use. It's kind of the probability of a catastrophic event or even a non-catastrophic event times the financial impact of rectifying it now and comparing that to rectifying it later. Like the famous things where, car manufacturers or McDonald's didn't put safe enough lids on their coffee, and they figured, some people get burned, but it'll cost us less to pay out lawsuits than if we just hope that we make it okay with the current cup rather than redesigning it. So that failed miserably.
Or if someone could have said, let's just use the cheapest solution that seems safe, as opposed to really putting the numbers down and figuring out what was safe or what's the financial impact if we don't do this right. And again, let's try this one lid as opposed to this other lid without really testing it out. Trying
and hope, right.
It's a failure to take a thought, an idea, a plan to the final step. Even if it costs you more time, even if it costs you more money, in the long run, that's how Nobel Prize winners are made. That's how champions are made. That's how physicists and PhDs and entrepreneurs are made. If Elon Musk had said, "Hey, let's just use solar panels to create energy," that's not good enough as saying, "Hey, solar panels are growing exponentially. So this is a solution that even if it doesn't work now, it'll work in the end because here's how the math works.
Exactly, and I've been thinking about that. There's a famous line by Galileo Galilei, who's my biggest hero, and he said, "Let us measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not." And the word risk, as you know, you talk to people, the same sorts of people on your podcast. I've talked to people like Allison Schrager on the Into the Impossible podcast. And the word risk comes from some Latin word, which means belief that you're going to fail. So I always joke, you made a comment about Elon Musk, but they say the optimist builds the airplane, but the pessimist builds the parachute. And I think you need both. You need the kind of wild-eyed optimist to think about what's going to happen if everything goes right. And then you need the guy who thinks, or gal who thinks about the contingency and the cost. See, the thing is, James, most people just think about their hope that they're going to succeed, and they think that if they just try hard enough, they'll get to the result that they're planning on. It's like a diet, I hope I lose weight by my birthday next month, but if I'm not, really trying, it's partially the satisfaction you get from having a plan. They say fulfill some of the reward of actually achieving the plan. So if I say I'm hoping to lose 10 pounds in a month, to drop another 10, I dropped 10 pounds, as I told you, during COVID. I dropped it from my double chin to my stomach. But it would have been better off another way.
Well, I'm on the COVID diet right now, and I highly recommend it.
I know. Yeah.
I lost about 10 pounds in 2 weeks.
Poor guy. And you didn't have as much avoirdupois, as they say, as I do. But the bottom line is...
I'm a beard, too.
Yeah.
Right now.
Oh, yeah. I can hardly see it there, but it looks good on you. But the point, I think is if you fail to plan, you'll plan to fail. I think that's kind of overwrought as well. But the bottom line is, how do you balance? Because you only have a finite amount of time, money, resources. How much do you put into the non-hope or the planning and the doing rather than just the hoping?
Right, because you can't plan for perfection, right? And that's a path to failure as well. In fact, you mentioned the invention of the airplane. Samuel Langley, who was given a $2 million budget in 1900 by the U.S. government, he assumed that the plane would have no wind. So he wasn't allowing for any, turbulence. Whereas the Wright brothers baked in the fact that there would be turbulence. So they were able to say, they were able to plan for imperfection. And that's how they invented the plane faster than a guy who had $2 million more of them. But the diet example is a great example too. Somebody says, "Oh, before my wedding, I'll just fast for 2 weeks." Just doesn't work. Just is lazy. It's lazy thinking. Anyone who uses the word "just," it's lazy thinking. You have to have a plan.
Exactly.
And the interesting thing about hope is, if you look at absurdism, the philosophy of absurdism, the idea that life might not have no meaning, so you have to develop your own meaning. One way to find meaning is through hope and faith. And that's a valid way, but even much better, or perhaps better, is acceptance of the good and the bad around you and develop meaning in your life despite that, as opposed to relying on something artificial or something like faith or hope. It's interesting in that way.
I wanted to ask you about that because I've hit a couple milestones lately on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. I'm over almost 34,000. So I finally have more YouTube subscribers than James Altucher, which has been my lifelong goal since I was 10 years old.
I still have to figure out what to do with my YouTube channel. I cannot make it work, but go ahead.
I will help you. And it's mainly from Noah Kagan and his wonderful producer, Mitchell Cohen. Shout out to Mitchell. But, I was thinking what's my strategy? Do I want to get to 1 billion subscribers? No, I don't really care about that. I have a very keen goal. As Galileo said, what you measure, you should measure well, and what you can't, you should make measurable. So here we've got a very measurable statistic, number of subscribers. So then what do you optimize beyond? What is your metric? What is your goal? And I'm trying to think about that in terms of planning forward, because I'm starting to get some of the negative aspects of that. In other words, I'm getting people that are, kind of trolling me, baiting me, trying to get me involved in their little squabbles with people that have been on the show, or criticizing me for having on people like Avi Loeb. Yesterday is a perfect example. This former scientist, and now he's a journalist named Ethan Siegel, very bright guy. He was a theoretical cosmologist, writes for Forbes magazine. I read it every day. But he's like calling out Avi Loeb because I, like you, had him on my podcast, except I got breaking news from him. The minute this new Galileo project was announced, I had him on. And he actually had asked me to join their advisory board of oversight, which is not paid. And I said I volunteered to do it because there's so much hype and hysteria and lack of Galileo's invocation to measure what's measurable. And so now it's just like cell phone cameras. He talked about in your show, you get this grainy, camera. It's not going to help if you have 10 million iPhone cameras all looking at the same event. You need better technology, better tools. This guy, Ethan, was, criticizing Avi as a hype man, as a charlatan, as a, essentially like not quite accusing him of fraud, but saying it's like, people should beware, and Brian Keating, you should stay away from him. And I just thought, because he's only in for his own good, and they have a long-standing beef, and I actually have refutations for most of what he said. But I'm like, do I answer this, or do I just hope it goes away? Like, do I get involved with it? And like, this is like a squabble between this guy Ethan and Avi, and why do I need to get involved in it? Like, the guy tweeted at me, so I'd get involved. But do I have to take that? No.
No, I think the way to stay with science is to stay on the science and rise above.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players, and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode.
If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking, Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. The guy at Forbes also, every move forward is a move backwards too. So he's making a move forward in his career. He's saying this guy, Avi Loeb, who we both like, is a charlatan. That's also a move backwards. He's exposing himself to getting into some sort of Twitter or social media fight. You need to rise above the downsides of what he's doing. The focus of what Avi's really trying to do, no matter what his agenda is that the U.S. government has admitted there are some important things that our pilots have seen that we don't know what they are. So what could possibly be wrong with measuring what matters, as Galileo says?
Yeah.
What could possibly be wrong with that?
Right. And especially if it was the government funding it, but it's not. It's some private Harvard, alumni probably. I actually don't know all the details of it, but it's like $1.7 million, enough for 3 small telescopes, that Avi talked with you about. What's wrong with that? It's private funding by an eminent scientist. The problem was that Ethan, who has a PhD in physics, very bright man, but he was saying things like, Avi's, he used to be a plasma physicist, and he's only made, he's written a lot of papers, but they're very low quality. And I just felt like, God, this guy's got
head of the Department of Astronomy at Harvard. So
for longer than anybody, as far as I.
Yeah.
Right. As far as that, for longer than any, and that's a thankless job. That nobody gets any gratification from being chairman of a department. It's like the higher you fly, the more easy you are to shoot down. Now, he has criticized him. There was a conflict with Jill Tarter, who's an eminent scientist herself, and started off this field, and she's featured in Contact, the movie. That's basically Ellie Arroway's character. Jill's a hero of mine. And she endorsed my first book. And they had a big blow up, and it was caught on video. And Avi behaved in a way that is indistinguishable from toxic masculinity. And we talked about that on my podcast. So I'm like, what should I do? Not have him on my podcast? And then I had Lawrence Krauss on, which, is another guy who's super controversial. And people are like, how dare you have him on? He had all these accusations, and he's pals with Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm just like, look, what people I have on people I don't agree with all the time, James. I don't agree with you half the time. We come to blows when we're in person.
What?
No, I don't even agree with myself half the time. I mean, come on, James. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
The thing is, though, you are a scientist. That's what you do for a living. That's what you love since you were a child. That's why you're close to winning the Nobel Prize. You have a code of science. What is science? It's asking questions that could be measured. It's coming up with a way of measuring them through an experiment or a theory that you could prove, and then doing it. And then it's just lazy thinking, I think, to get into the squabbles, to get into the politics, to get into the gossip. Buddha, who was a scientist of his day, nothing in Buddhism is about faith at all, by the way. Buddha says right speech. So what is right speech? It's not engaging in the squabbles and politics. It's saying, are there unidentified flying objects and how do I identify them? That is right speech in this sense, in the scientific sense, in the Buddhist sense, in the non-lazy sense. You're not just saying, hey, I'm just going to defend Avi and then go back to the science. Or, hey, I'm going to hope that this blows over. You're just going to focus on the science and finding the truth. Now, if the truth depends on if Avi's going to fall apart because he's getting too much mired in the squabbles, that's another story. But he's not like that.
No.
And he found the funding. And look, I'd like to know, as Avi says, you want to know, are these unidentified flying objects alien nature? Are they Chinese in nature? Either way, it's important to know. Are they weather in nature? It's important to know because our pilots are being affected by it.
And I made this point to him, and unfortunately, YouTube has a very, very good algorithm. So I had my super producer, Stuart Volkow, find some images of the Hubble Deep Field. Have you ever seen this Hubble Deep Field, James? It's like all these galaxies and no stars.
Yeah,
I call it
beautiful.
It's the cosmic wallpaper. It's literally the cosmic wallpaper. It's the farthest you can see with like actual formation of galactic structure. Beyond that is the cosmic background radiation that I study, and that's literally 13 billion years, afterwards in some cases. So anyway, I had this discussion with Avi, and I said, Avi, the Hubble Deep Field, that's not data. So all these people are clamoring for data. And I say, that is an image. That's a beautiful picture. It's inspiring. Maybe you could torture it and say, well, if I count up each one of the galaxies and I multiply by how much size that occupies on the sky, then I multiply by how many patches it would take to occupy the whole sky, I can estimate roughly the number of galaxies in the universe. And that's actually what we do. How we know there's 500 billion plus or minus 400 billion galaxies in the observable universe. So I said that to Avi, and he agreed with me, and he said, oh, that's a great point. And then unfortunately, Stuart, my super producer, used a video from YouTube that has some copyright associated with. So I got a strike, and they made me take it out of YouTube. And so it just kind of cuts from me saying, like, look at the Hubble Deep Field, and then it's like, and now on to other news, But the point being, James, is that it's not just taking. It's a strong. Who would you call? We talked about this a month ago when I was on your show. Is a pilot an expert? Is he an expert or she an expert? Yeah, and I've talked to some. They're experts in certain things. But astronomers are also experts. We're experts at looking up and surveying the night sky with a cadence and providing tons and tons of actual data. Data meaning not just pretty pictures, spectra, calibration, flat field, dark field, all the information that goes into an astronomer's observation of a galaxy. We should apply that same toolkit to looking for this very important subject. The problem is it gets associated with, prosthetic forehead creatures, and it becomes a laughingstock. But, and I think there is something to say about, Avi promoting a lot of what he does. Even my friends that like him are like, wow, he's really still selling his book. And I'm like, no, he's got a new book. It's 850 pages, and it's about astrobiology. So I give him a lot of credit, and he's surely energetic. But look, James, this is a privately funded, search for something that is 1/5 or 1/20th of the budget spent by the government, which we don't even think is sufficient because they can't identify, a Chinese ICBM, I don't know, a drone or something. Who knows what the hell? Anyway, something is interesting. I'm not saying it's probative, but I made the point. Who would be most interested of all? James Altucher, owner of Stand Up New York and the proprietor of the James Altucher Show, or an astrophysicist who has a stake in understanding the ultimate laws of nature? You have a stake. I have that same stake. Plus, and there's the good reason, as you always say, and the real reason. And with that, James, I've got to go on a telecon, which is where I'd not rather be. I'd rather be on a telescope.
No, and I appreciate it. I think to summarize, if you catch yourself thinking the words I just did it because of this, or I'm going to try this, we'll see what happens, or I hope this happens. These are lazy words. Notice them in yourselves. I notice them in myself. I notice them in the selves of students or listeners or whatever. And it's examples of lazy thinking. And I know you have a hard stop, Brian, so I appreciate it. This is an important topic, and I hope people listen and take it into account in their own thinking.
And James, I hope you feel better. Just try to take care of yourself, my brother.
No, you know what? There is no try. And here's the thing. I will say this about Yoda, is that doing something is better than trying something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing is the best marketing. If you start a business and sell it, that is good marketing for your next business.
Yeah.
If you do a successful experiment as opposed to try a successful experiment, I don't know if you tried hard enough, but if you did it, I'm willing to trust you on your next experiment. Doing is the best marketing.
It's like Sideshow Bob says in The Simpsons. He says, what is this with attempted murder? Do they give you a Nobel Prize in attempted chemistry? See you guys.
Well,
I love it.
Wait,
Oh, yeah.
Brian.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold you one more minute.
Yeah.
Because you brought up the etymology of the word just.
Yes.
Just, of course, means fair, but also originally just meant exact. Like this block fit just in the structure. But then etymology became lazy, and the word just means almost fits now.
Yes.
It just fits.
Which is the opposite.
And so right. So just itself has become a lazy word about itself. So this is a dangerous word, the word just. So
be
Brian,
careful.
You will win the Nobel Prize if you do not use the word just. That is my final advice for you. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Entresto, sacubitril valsartan tablets, is the #1 heart failure brand prescribed by cardiologists and has helped over 1 million people with heart failure. It's a prescription medicine that treats adults with long-lasting chronic heart failure and works better when the heart cannot pump a normal amount of blood to the body.
Don't take Entresto if pregnant. It can cause harm or death to an unborn baby. Don't take Entresto with an ACE inhibitor or aliskiren, or if you've had angioedema with an ACE or ARB. Don't take with aliskiren or within 36 hours of taking an ACE inhibitor. The most serious side effects are angioedema, low blood pressure, kidney problems, or high blood potassium. Angioedema is swelling of your face, lips, tongue, and throat that may cause death. If it causes difficulty breathing, get emergency help.
Ask your doctor about Entresto. To learn more, visit support.entresto.com or call 833-446-6699. For pricing, visit Entresto.com/cost. If you can't afford your medication, Novartis may be able to help.